Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. And with the, previous release of the 2-year anniversary Visions of Coleus team, today I want to talk about team composition and what a blue stacking team means versus what a green burst damage team means. And I think of, this is a very good example of what a blue stacking team would be because it is that. And then with the upcoming Goddess of Destiny rerun that should be coming in about 4 or 5 days from now, that is a very focused green burst team. So I figured these would be two good examples to define so people, newer players, would know what makes a blue team work, why is it so efficient, and what are you looking for when putting units together if you don't have all of the listed options for the team. So before we begin, I want to give a huge shout out to Fermafu for making this new team builder app for Slimy Sky Memories. He did this, with help from other Discord management members, but, on his own. And I think he's done a pretty good job of it because you can click on the protectors, you could filter them out. So let's reset. You've gotten broken down by EX and 5 stars. You can go back to the battle units, and they are also broken out by 5-star EXs. You can get elements in here. You can get magic and physical. So this is going to be a really good tool for people to use to show, different team comps in Discord, and, while I'm doing videos on screen if I need examples, because it's much, much quicker. You can put supports in there. I mean, it's a really well-built app. So shout out to Fermafu and everyone else who put their time into making this. They did a really good job. But with that said, let's go ahead and get started with the whole example I have wanting to do this. So for a newer player, I told you to summon on the 2-year anniversary banner, the Visions of Coleus. And why? Well, because I said they were good units. But if you don't understand why they are good units, and you don't understand the concept of the team, you're not really going to understand how to play the game rather than put these units together and have fun. So it's not very educational. And a lot of my videos are geared more towards you having a basic understanding of the game. So here I'm going to try and break it down as best as possible, as quickly as possible without losing any detail. But I do rant a lot, so I'm going to try my best. Okay, I'm recording this out of order, but these are some very, very brief talking points that define a stacking team versus a burst team. We'll cover this later in the video. But stacking teams are generally used for longer fights, 8 to 10 turns, generally, not always, but generally limited to blue orb teams because of how the protectors are built. The protector is stacking some kind of buff, and you have high cost, big buff skills. So you've got 80-point skills, 55-point skills, really, really big time percentages to do a lot of damage. You've got a bunch of orb changers in the battle unit line. So not the protector orb changing, but other battle units. And for most fights, you're going to have one big time nuking DPS. So by definition, a stacking team is a team where you can consistently stack buffs on units forever and ever and ever. Why is Lumi a stacking protector? Because she stacks 12% attack unlimited on these specific units until the end of battle. So therefore you are stacking 12 on 12 on 12 on 12. Well, that's really, really, really good. But that means that you want to use Protector Lumi a lot. And the best way to get a lot of protection skill gauge is by having a lot of blue orbs, which is why, Violet is a blue orb changer. Cleash is a blue orb changer. Rimuru is a blue orb changer. So in order to get as many stacks as possible of Lumi to make your characters as powerful as much powerful, you need to be consistently having full 6 hand sends of blue orbs. And to do that, you need multiple blue orb changers. And the reason why this team runs so well is that because she is stacking on everybody except for you. So that's an interesting thought, but we'll not touch that. So you're stacking 12% attack on Jean, Blanc, Violet, and Rimuru. Awesome. We have these 3 characters giving you blue orbs, for days, right? And every time you use a skill, the blue orb changes get more expensive, 30 points, 50 points, 70 points. So in order to get around that, you need to be able to get a lot of skill points as well, which is where the second part of Lumi comes in, is where every time you use her, she gives an extra 100% skill point gain to blue orbs, which means that, by turn 6 and turn 7, when all your orb changes cost 70 to 100 points, you're actually making almost 300 points a turn when you're capped out at 500. So you're able to manage it a little better, and you're able to use a bunch of orb changes in one turn, even though they've become more expensive. And to help with that, she's also passively raising your skill cap. So when you start a fight with any team, you're capped at 100 points. But Lumi, every turn, raises that by 50, allowing you to store more and more and more points, which allows you to use more and more expensive orb change abilities in order to get 350, 400 skill points. And then, so you're stacking the attack on your mainline nukers, right? You're stacking your blue skill point gain, giving you more points when you send full hands of blues, which you want to do because you have so many blue orb changers. And then you're also getting more skill cap, allowing you to hold more points. So when it's time to nuke on turn 8 or turn 9, you have the skill points necessary to use all of the big time buffs. 80 points, 80 points, 80 points, 55 and 55. If you want to properly nuke with this team, you need to be able to use all these, which means you need a high point cap, and you need a lot of points in general, which you're only going to get from having a lot of blue orbs, and you're only going to have that by stacking up with Lumi a lot. So that is the essential blue stacking team, is having a number of big time buffs, a number of blue orb changers, and a protector who stacks something. It doesn't have to be, Lumi. There are numerous other blue stack and protection characters. This Rimuru, he stacks 20% ult damage forever on everybody, so it's not even limited. It's very generic. This Diablo stacks ult resistance down, a debuff on the enemy, which makes your ults hit harder. This Shuna stacks stun strike and pierce power. So there are multiple variations of the blue stacking team, but they all revolve around you having three things: the ability to get more skill points on blue orbs, the ability to raise your skill cap, allowing you to hold more points, and the ability to stack some kind of power. And in order to run that efficiently, you need blue orb changers. So if you are running the Visions of Coleus team, and maybe you don't have Jean, but you have everybody else, so let's go ahead and reset her. You have these three characters, because you're free to play, you were on the first banner, and you're really, really good, and she's also on the first banner, which is no longer available, but I'm trying to make a point here. You need a good fifth slot. Well, you have the green orb changes covered, because you've got green to blue, you've got orange to blue, you've got self-converting, and you've got buff and the alt swap ability, which turns any alt orb into a blue, allowing you to send full hands of blues even when you have alts. Really good skill. That's why Blanc is really good. You need a fifth slot. I don't think you need Orb Changer on this team, but you could certainly bring one. You could bring EX Guy. He's also converting greens to blues and technically an orange. He's got the alt buff, which this team does not have, which will enhance your power. You could bring, let's see, where is she? You could bring Light Milim, right? She's got the same self-converting skill that Rimuru does. She's also giving an attack buff for the team. So she's doing double duty. She's got an orb change, and she's got a generic support buff. If you want to bring, let's say, Kazuma or something, you could bring him. He's got the attack up, the defense down buff, and blue orb changing. Megamine has the oranges covered just like Violet, but she's also giving an alt damage buff. So you're really wanting to build a team around people who have two skills that really work on this team. High damage buff and an orb change for blues. It wouldn't make a whole bunch of sense to bring Sokka, right? Because she's got an attack buff. It's dependent on other things that this team does not have. And she's got a future hand of green orbs, which this team, if you're running it with Lumi, it doesn't want green orbs. So she's not really the best pick. This Milim, not the best pick. She's got low-cost skills that are meant to be used in short-term fights. And she's got a green orb change, so not a good pick. If you don't have any of these characters, you could use, a free-to-play option. You could use free-to-play Water Rimuru. He's got a green orb change like Cleash, and he's got the self-convert like Rimuru does. You could use free-to-play Geld. Sure, he's not bringing you any additional damage buff, but he will make your life easier because he's got his orange orb change, and he's got giving all blue orbs away to the highest damaging unit, which would probably be your DPS, which, you're going to want because you want a lot of ult gauge, and you want a lot of, points for that specific character. So you're looking to combine a bunch of units with blue orb changes and buffs onto this team. Now you can throw in like, let's say, Space Rimuru if you want. He doesn't have an orb change, but he does have an attack buff. And this team doesn't have an attack buffer. And because you've got the blue orbs pretty much covered, you can bring him, and he will work efficiently to buff everybody on this team. So they don't need to be a blue orb changer when you already have 3 of them on the team. You can just bring a very generic support. That's up to you, and it's up to your box. But now, as hopefully that was a good enough explanation of what a blue stacking team is. Let's move on to a burst damage team. Alright, so now that we've talked about what a blue stacking team is and what you generally should be looking for when building a team, it's now time to move on to burst damage teams, which are exemplified by, these couple talking points. They're built for shorter fights, so like 4 turns. They're typically focused on green and orange orbs because you don't need that many protection gauges to, do what you need to do. They're looking for low cost and quick damage buffs. So not 80-point skills like, the stacking teams are looking for. You want 25, 30-point skills that don't have, the higher multipliers, but they also don't cost as many points. And then you're looking for a lot of teams are going to have the protectors taking care of most of your orb changing abilities. And instead of having one big time nuking unit, you're going to have a few different units all doing, their ults to get as much damage as possible because you haven't been stacking for 8 or 10 turns. You don't have 300% attack. You've got 25, 30% attack. So the Goddess of Destiny team is a very good example because, again, we are getting their rerun very soon. Mirren is the protector, Bride Shuna is the DPS, and then we've got Soka, Rain, free-to-play Traya, and we've got the Hero 2.0 who is also on the team. Now, if we look at this team in-game, right, we have Mirren, and what does Mirren do? She causes all orbs in the hand to generate light-seeking souls. So what, in layman's term, it means that for every orb of damage that you send, you will get another one. So you will, if you send 6 orbs in a turn, you will get 6 follow-up attacks, additional damage. Alongside of that, she gives all magic allies guaranteed crit for 2 turns, and it increases all orbs skill point gain by 100% for 2 turns. All orbs. So she's not raising your skill cap. She's not stacking 12 or 20% whatever on your units for multiple turns. She's giving you guaranteed crits, follow-up damage, and extra skill points on any orb. So with that, you're limited to 100 points anytime. That's your maximum skill point cap. So you have to use units that have low cost skills to make them very efficient. And here, because also Mirren is not an orb changer, right? She's doing other things. We only have technically one dedicated orb changer, and that's the free-to-play Traya. Now Traya is really good because she is, doing the double conversion. She's got the special orb convert for greens, and then she's also got her own self convert, which is very powerful. And then that's it. That's all. We have a Shuna who is technically stealing orbs, which you can count as an orb change, and it's a very selfish buff because, if you have 6 orbs, 3 of them are hers, then you use a skill, suddenly you have 6 orbs of her, which makes her, do a lot of damage very quick, and also gets a lot of ult gauge. But the rest of these skills, the hero buff, 25 points, the rain buff, 25 points, the Shuna, her other buff, 25 points, Soka buff, 25 points, 25, 25, 25, 25. What does that add up to? 100 points. Perfect. It's like they're meant to be used together. So by doing these 4 buffs, you're not going to do, 8 million damage. You're going to do about 600,000 damage. But instead of going for 8 turns, you're going to do it in about 3. And that's the whole process of using a burst team, is to get a lot of damage very, very quickly to try and overwhelm the enemy, who generally won't have as much HP as a stacking boss would have. So, the boss that I would take this team against versus the boss that I would take the Visions of Coleus team against, they are not the same HP levels. This boss had like 1.7 million HP, and this one's going to have like 800,000 or something like that. So you want to use low-cost skills that can still buff the team in some way, shape, or form. So let's say you don't have the Hero 2.0. Who is another unit that has small-time buffs that you could put on this team who would make, a lot of sense? Well, it's not Megumin, right? Because she's changing to blue orbs, and she's got an 80-point skill. And you're capped at 100, which means you only have 20 points left, which means you can't use any of these other units' buffs, right? So she's not a good pick. What about Shizu? She's got low-cost skills. She's changing to a green orb, which this team generally wants, and she's got a stacking attack buff. But does that stacking attack buff actually hit the other units that, we're putting her with? Because she is buffing, hold it, World of Fantasy and Fount of Wisdom characters. Attack until the end of battle by 15%. Well, is Shuna on World of Fantasy? Well, let's find out. She is. Okay, well, if you want to make Shuna your DPS, which she very much wants to be, then that would make a lot of sense. However, the rest of the team, Sokka and Rain, they are not on World of Fantasy. So if you're wanting multiple units to do lots of damage, Shizu may not be the best option for you. She's definitely an option if you're looking to only hit with Shuna, but maybe not a team-wide best case scenario. If we go down into the free-to-play units, this Dark Anniversary Milim, she's got the special convert just like Triad does. She's got a 55-point skill, which, is expensive, and that's, that only leaves you 45 points to use something else, which means you can only use one of the buffs instead of 2, unless you use a couple of them early, which is definitely possible. So you can bring a 55-point skill unit onto this team. It's just now you have to be very conscious of what buff you're using on what turn, and if it's going to last by the time you're ready to actually nuke, because you would ideally want to nuke with the alt buff, the magic buff, the attack buff, and Shuna's buff, but you only have the ability in one turn to use this buff and one of them. So you have to be very aware of how much your skills cost and what it's going to take to activate all of them. Another unit you could bring is Octagram Lumi, right? She's pretty neutral. She's not orb changing, but she is giving a permanent alt damage increase by 20% every time you use her skill. And, you can use that skill multiple times, up to 4, and cap it out. Will you be able to use all 4 stacks on this team? Probably not, because they get kind of expensive. But you can get an extra 20, 40, maybe 60% alt damage out of this, which would definitely help everyone. So she's definitely an option. She's not a green orb changer, but she is a pretty generic buffer. You like Guy. He's got an alt buff. He also has a crit resistance down debuff, which definitely helps this team because Mirren is giving all magic characters guaranteed crits. Well, you could use that, but if we look at what Rain does, she's already lowering crit resistance right here by 20%, which is the exact same thing that Guy does. So, and they're not going to add together. It's not going to magically be 40%. It's just going to be 20 across the board. So maybe Guy isn't the best option to put on this team. You could bring, like I said, Dark Milim. You could bring Octagram Lumi. You could bring a different alt buffing unit if you have them. You could bring Space Shinsha. She's on this team technically. She's got the 70% alt damage buff. It's 55 points again, which you still have to, keep in mind all the other skills. But it's definitely an option for you. Or you could just run with these three, or maybe not even Rain, and you can bring in, let's say, free-to-play Isis, right? Say you need the green buff from Rain, but you also want another orb changer, because sometimes things don't work out. Isis can do that. And then you can have this, and then you can have a buff that you can hold, two buffs that you can hold, plus the ult damage, and you have the guaranteed crits, and you're looking good. So a green burst team wants green orbs, green orb changers. They want small time buffs for quick release damage versus, again, like the big stacking 80-point buffs from Violet and Jean and Blanc and 8 turns of stacking, so you're doing millions of damage. So that is a very brief overview of how you want to build a team. Everyone's box is different. Your units are going to be different. So if you need assistance, join the Discord. I've got a lot of people who are willing to help people out building teams for certain situations. And it's a lot easier to build a team when we can see what you're using, what you're working with. Because telling me in a comment, I've got this, and this, it's like, great. I need to see everything else you got. So it's very, very difficult for people to build a team when they can't see what you have. So if this video kind of gives you an idea, but you're still not sure, join the Discord, link in the video description, and we can definitely help you out. But hopefully this video gave you a good idea of what you're looking for in a stacking versus a burst damage team. Again, does not fit every single type of scenario, but this is very generic. Let me know if this helped you, but that's it from me. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.